Hi, I'm Ben Sheeran, and in this short video I'd like to talk a little bit about STEP Eiken and how it relates to the Fluency course. So the first main thing about STEP Eiken is I find that a lot of people don't really understand what STEP Eiken is, how it's designed, what it's made for, and all sorts of things like that. Especially customers don't really get it. So basically, to understand STEP Eiken, you have to realize that it was designed not as a general English test, but as a test that matches up with the school curriculum in Japan. So STEP Eiken 5 is the equivalent of finishing junior high school first grade, right? It has the same kind of language, the same kind of content as a student who's finished the first grade could be expected to understand and could be expected to pass Eiken 5. And thus Eiken 4 corresponds to the second grade of junior high school. And Eiken 3 represents the level of English that you'd have after finishing junior high school and graduating. Pre-2 is equivalent to high school second grade, and the second grade of Eiken is equivalent to finishing high school. And in fact, recently, the Eiken company, or the Eiken whatever they are, is really pushing for this to be accepted as a way to determine entry to university. And because of that, the test has become much more difficult and much more challenging to pass in a lot of ways. Now, STEP Eiken 5 and 4 only test reading and listening skills. They only have multiple choice answers. So for these levels, it's quite possible to pass even if your English isn't particularly good. You can just get lucky, right? From grade 3 onwards, there is a short essay, and that makes more of a hurdle, I think. And there's also an interview test, which is also a bit of a hurdle. So it becomes a bit more challenging at that point. Grade 3 is, in my opinion, not particularly challenging, and Pre-2 is pretty similar to Grade 3. There's not such a big jump between the two. But second grade is much harder. Second grade is actually fairly difficult to pass for a normal student here in Japan. So that's the kind of starting point when approaching STEP Eiken. I would be very wary about making any promises about Eiken. For example, saying, if you join here, you will pass Eiken at a certain level by a certain date. I think that's very dangerous, and I wouldn't do it myself. And the reason for that is because, it's all about the students, right? In order to pass the Eiken test, there's actually 3 different factors. The first is your English level, so how good you are at English in general. The second is familiarity with the test, so how well you know the Eiken test, the types of questions, the timing, the kind of answers they're looking for. And the third is the particular test that you get on the day, because this is going to make a huge difference. Did you have questions that you could answer? Or did you have questions that were unexpectedly difficult? So those 3 factors come together and determine whether you pass or not. And even people who you think are definitely going to pass can fail on the day if they have a bad day, if they're nervous, if they get some bad questions. So the other thing that's changed recently about Eiken is that you used to be able to pass with an overall score, whereas now it's been broken into components and you have to pass each component. So that makes it a little bit more challenging again. You can't really make up for a weak area by being really good in other areas. So getting ready for STEP Eiken. The first thing is just to get better at English, which is not something that you can do in a short time, and it's not something that you can kind of do specifically for Eiken, right? So you just work on your English skills, on your listening, on your speaking, on your reading, and on your writing. The other thing you can do is get ready for Eiken specifically by becoming familiar with the test, and you can do that easily by buying one of these books or by using past papers. The Eiken website has a number of past papers on it, so you could just use those to get familiar with the test. How we approach STEP Eiken at our school is we don't specifically prepare students for the test. The way the Fluency course is designed is textbook 1A and 1B, so the first level of the course. This is going to naturally help students pass Eiken 5 and Eiken 4 without studying for it and without preparing for it. The second level of the Fluency course is going to help students pass Eiken 3, particularly the speaking and the writing components. We're going to practice that using the Fluency course, and it's going to be fairly easy for students to pass Eiken 3. The third level of the Fluency course is going to help students pass Eiken Pre-2. So the kind of questions that we do in the speaking and writing activities are loosely modeled on the kind of questions you're going to get in Eiken Pre-2. So just by doing the Fluency course, we expect most students will be able to pass Eiken Pre-2 by the third year of junior high school. Looking at our current junior high school students, I would say maybe a quarter of them have Eiken 2. Maybe half of them have Eiken Pre-2, and the last quarter have Eiken 3. So that's the kind of results that we're seeing with our student body. And our student body are very normal students. They're not particularly academic, and they're not particularly focused on English. So the one thing that we do for Eiken is that around the time of the Eiken test, we run little workshops. So we do a workshop to help students practice for the essay question for Eiken 3, Pre-2 and 2. And then for students that pass the first stage of Eiken, the paper test, we'll do a little workshop to help them prepare for the interview test. Again, for Eiken 3, Pre-2 and 2. And that's basically 1 hour on a Sunday, and the students that want to come in, practice for the test, and go on to the test. And we find this is enough to help them prepare. Eiken is a pretty badly designed test, in my opinion, and particularly this writing section and the speaking section. There's a very rigid format that they expect you to follow. So just being familiar with the format and knowing what kind of answers that they want from you is going to make it much easier for the students to pass. So that's how we help our students with that. But we don't do any other study specifically for Eiken. Some students choose to buy the study guides from a couple of slides back and work through it on their own, but most don't. So that's it. That's the relationship between the Fluency course and STEP Eiken. Basically, just by doing the course, most students end up at the point where they can pass Eiken Pre-2, possibly 2 if they're very into it. And that is, a couple of years early, which for me is fine. Some parents are a bit more ambitious, but we don't try to encourage that kind of parent at our school. All right, so if you want to know more about the Fluency course, please come to our website, join our Facebook group, or continue watching these videos.